Hi, this is Micornus, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. We are dealing with part 5 today of dealing with hindrances of church growth. We're dealing with hindrances of church growth. And we're speaking about them because we are actually empowering pastors and leaders in order to avoid these hindrances so that you can be able to facilitate your church to grow, and because there are those things that are really preventable, and some of the things that we actually strangulating our own churches not to grow, they are actually preventable, and I want to emphasize that. The first hindrance that I want to deal with this day is what we call wrong atmosphere, which is really become a real serious hindrance when a church operates under wrong atmosphere. And very, very important that we look into it as well as a hindrance and see how do we then avoid that. The atmosphere that operates inside the church is a very crucial to the growth of that church or a non-growth to it. The atmosphere becomes very important. And sometimes we ignore that. And I must emphasize that the atmosphere speaks to whether people stay or people leave. It actually speaks also to whether new members join or they don't join. This is very important, the atmosphere. If you're having, like, for an example, a negative atmosphere of people not being united, people hating each other, people gossiping against each other, that type of atmosphere actually chases people away. It makes people not to remain in such environment because the environment becomes toxic for them. And that is very key that we emphasize that please make sure that the environment or the atmosphere is good for the people, so that each one of the people who want to be members and those that are members already, they must see this church as sustainable purely because the atmosphere is correct. When the church is actually having a wrong atmosphere prevailing in it, and is the old hatred of, or also maybe animosity that people are having, as I've mentioned earlier, or strife as well, because those are type of spirits that will actually chase people away. And also, there are a lot of quarrels in some of the churches that when new members come in and they realize that there's a lot of quarrels in this church, or even the old members, they cannot stay in such an environment. And these are the type of atmospheres that are unacceptable, and they are actually making people to walk away. Disunity, I've mentioned that as well, and bickering between each other. And sometimes the atmosphere is caused by the leaders themselves not agreeing to things. They are just not actually able to work together. You're looking at maybe the pastor and his associates, or maybe just the board members or the leadership themselves. They're just not in unison together. They are not able to work together. They're not able to pull to the same direction. That becomes a serious hindrance because people look up to the leaders, and if the leaders are just not in unison, that disturbs it as well. The other atmosphere that is caused by just the leaders not loving people, lack of love to people. And therefore, the leaders are actually themselves not supporting the people when they need support. They are not showing love to the people when people need love from them. Very, very important that we actually look at it and say, is the church having a good atmosphere? If the atmosphere is not good enough, people are going to walk out of that church, and I must assure you. Now, animosity, therefore, between pastors and their leaders and the church members and their leaders as well, it becomes very, very crucial to see that it gets sorted out much more quicker. Because if it is not sorted out, it is actually going to strangulate the church and therefore cause actually regress to the church that has been built with hard labor. Very, very important that we emphasize that. Now, I want us to also understand that these things, they spill over to the community. Because the community will be aware that this particular church, there's a lot of strife. There's a lot of disunity. There's a lot of quarrels in this particular church. It actually puts them off. They're not interested in being part of such a church themselves. So they will not come. So please be careful of that, because you may lose out on members because of that. The other thing that I want us to look at today as a hindrance in a church is what we call wrong administration. Wrong administration. And I must really say, as an administrator myself, I'm always very passionate about this particular one, that churches must be careful that they put administrative structures in place. And this must be the right administration that will make people feel at home. People must feel that they are part of the church because of the right administration. Now, wrong administration has got a tendency of becoming a hindrance as well towards the people that are part of this church. The administration that gives room to injustices, for instance, when there's a discipline, there's uneven-handedness, whereby there's no justice at all on how people are being treated, a lot of cheating in the sense of administration, dishonesty, not dealing with money's right, and so on. And all those are very, very disturbing tendencies that actually disturbs the church from growing. Corruption in a church, for instance, financial corruptions, and all those become really very wrong. And this type of things, then nobody can stand that. And congregation actually tear apart because of corruption. We've seen churches fighting for monies. We've seen people of churches even shooting each other, killing each other because of money, because of poor administration in the beginning. And that can actually hinder the church from growing. And when other people in the community see what is happening in the church, they're definitely not going to be encouraged to be part of that particular church. And that is why I want to emphasize that please be careful on how you handle administration in a particular church, because it will actually speak to whether the church grows or not. Stealing monies, for instance, I've said before that the church money is a public finance. It is a public money. So therefore, it must actually be carefully orchestrated and managed with proper structures of administration. Because if that money is being stolen, then people are not going to be actually having confidence to continue with that particular church. Lack of transparency. Those are type of poor administrative issues that can be avoided, but yet we have seen many churches continue with those. So main approach as well, whereby people don't want to give, those type of tendencies as well, they hinder the church from growing, and it will always kill the church off, and they will actually grow what we call potentials of crumbling of the church as well. This is very, very detrimental, and we need to really look at it more closely and say, these are hindrances. We need a proper administration. Put it in place and you'll see the church will grow based on that good administration. While in some of the churches there's no sign of administration at all, we know that there are those that are doing very well in administration. And in South Africa, we've seen that, and being honest, that most predominantly white churches, we've seen great administration in those. And some of us in our black churches, we ignored this point of administration, but it's very key. Remember that for the church to grow, it is actually going to be needing a proper administration that people can have trust in, and people can actually trust the leadership because of the proper administration. And over administration of some of the churches, some of them are really over administered. And I must really say, when they are over administered, we're talking about whereby they don't even allow the move of the Holy Spirit. And I want to warn against that as well, because there are times where they are so over administered. For an example, a church that believes in time of finishing is a good thing, and for you to finish at a particular time. But if then that time constrains the move of the Holy Spirit, because it's not every day that the finishing time will always be the same. Because the finishing time might be constrained by things that we are aware of, like if there's a move of the Holy Spirit, if there's extended worship, because people are still soaked in worship. In real sense, that must not be stopped because we say we are good administrators, we are finishing at this time, and so on. So please be careful of that, because that can be an impediment as well. That can actually disturb a church as well. So please be careful of that as a leader, and that is something that we need to look at as well. So we know that the administration is good. But we know that we need to really avoid actually disturbing the move of God because of administration either. This is very, very important. Now, wrong timing is one of the hindrances that I want to touch before I close today. Wrong timing. Now, it's a hindrance of church growth. Wrong timing can be as well. Time is the most essential commodity that we know today, and that's very important. Based on timing, is going to be very important also on how you continue doing well as a church. So that's very important. So wrong timing can actually be a hindrance to the church. And when the church is having the habit of basically of wasting time, coming out late, due to long services as well, that hinders the church normally. Because then people are not comfortable in that, because some people have got their own times where they go to work, some of them are going to run businesses, and of course life is busy as well. So you don't drag services unnecessarily, because if you do so, that can as well be a hindrance in some of the churches. So that's very, very important that we look at that. It will serve as a hindrance in the growth of the church if we don't take care of that. So I know churches that time is just not an issue to them. They don't care what time they start. They don't care what time they arrive in church. They just don't care on what time they come out. And there are those type of churches that they call inkonzo ayiphumi. So in other words, when they are there, they are there. So they will actually stick around in that particular church throughout the church. The services will be dragged to an extent that people are not even looking at the time. But there are those people that are not going to be comfortable in such arrangements. So please be careful of that. So wrong timing become a hindrance in that regard. And I must say, in summary, growth and turnaround in any church demands that church leaders and pastors must be prayerful, they must be carefully and systematically, and please make sure that they also courageously remove these hindrances. So you must be intentional about removing the hindrances and dealing with them, because if you don't deal with them, then the church will fail to grow. And that's very, very key. So please make sure that until that is done, growth will actually always elude you. It will always not be there, and it will always not show up. It is very, very important. It may not be easy, but it is possible to grow the church. It may not be easy, but it's possible to put away the hindrances and make sure that the church grows. So therefore, it is very, very important that you take care of that as a pastor and as a leader, and then you become intentional in growing your church, but deal with the hindrances. I want to end up here today. Your host, Micornus Phokane. Thank you very much for listening to us and be part of this great topic. And I hope that you've learned something out of this, and you are actually going to do well by shaping this up in your church and making sure that you remove those hindrances so that you can grow your church. I'm going to check out right here, but before I check out, I want to remind you of our Facebook page, Church Governance Solutions, and the other one is Micornus Phokane. Like those Facebook pages. Make sure that you click notification buttons as well, so that you're notified when there are some teachings that we posted. And also remember, we have got the YouTube, Micornus Phokane, and please go and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Make sure that you click notification button on it as well. And as I check out, Micornus Phokane, your leader and founder of Church Governance Solutions, allow me to say cheers for now.